This podcast is part of E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience.
War Eagle Auburn fans, welcome to No Huddle, your source for Auburn football news and discussion, part of the E2C Network. I'm AJ Richardson, and I'm also here with Jared Davis. It's the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Are you ready for it, Jared?
Yeah, I mean, ready or not, I guess.
Ready or not, here come the Bulldogs. They're the national champs, and every Georgia fan wants to remind me that they were national champs. I don't know about you, but every time, I literally introduced it. I mean, it was one of my friends, but I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" And he was like, "Hey, my name's this, and Georgia's national champions." And you're like, "Okay, unnecessary, but thanks for the info."
Yeah, it's funny. I know it's been a while now, but when we did it in 2010, it was just more of like a relief. I didn't go around, telling everybody.
Yeah.
I was just like, if somebody brought it up, I was like, yeah, it was exciting. I want to do it again, but I wasn't walking around, hey, Auburn national champs.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, so I feel like that has a piece to do with it. Every year I feel like, Jared, let's talk about, living in the state of Georgia and, how it is, especially now post them winning a national championship. What have you kind of noticed from their fan base since then?
I don't talk to them much anymore. We've been so bad. I'm like, I just don't even bring up football, and kind of shut it down by just talking about my own team poorly whenever they bring it up. But yeah, I mean, all in all, it's tough. I mean, when you live in a state and you don't pull for that school and their school's doing really well, it's difficult. I would say probably would rather win Georgia than Alabama because I live in Georgia. Some people don't understand that, but at the end of the day, that's what we have to be around 365. So, to me, this game means more.
Yeah. No, I think so too.
Yeah.
I was on the way to the beach. We ran into this. This was literally like minutes after the Auburn versus Missouri game, and this guy saw it had an Auburn shirt on. He was like, "Did you just watch that game?" I was like, "Yes, I did." And so we had a little conversation about it. And he's from Georgia, and he was like, "I don't like Georgia. Like, I do not like Georgia fans." Like, he was like, Alabama fans are fine. And, if you compare them to Georgia and Auburn or Alabama fans, they're fine. And I was like, thank you. You're spot on. And this was like a guy, an older guy. And I was like, thank you. I'm so glad to hear I'm not the only person that for some reason thinks Georgia fans sometimes can be really annoying. So.
I will say this. I don't think they realize it because somebody made a comment during the national championship game, and they were saying, do you want to know about Georgia fans? He said Auburn fans are actively rooting for Alabama. Like, there are a bunch of Auburn fans that are actively rooting for Alabama to win that national championship game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that shocked a lot of Georgia fans. And I'm sure every fan base is a little naive to how they are. But I do get that sense that they were very shocked that anybody would be pulling for Alabama. But I do think that's a pretty bold statement that there were people pulling for Alabama to beat Georgia.
Isn't that weird? Like, especially people we've seen Alabama win over and over and over. And, I was honestly in the camp of I was rooting for Alabama to win. But I also have lots of family members that are Alabama fans. So, I was kind of doing that for them in a way. But also I was like, I really don't want to see what happens if Georgia wins this thing. I really don't. And guess what? It happened. I felt like it was probably bound to happen at some point. I was just trying to delay the inevitable.
Well, yeah, from a historical standpoint, it has not felt like it recently. Historical standpoint, we're very similar. I think that technically gave them two that everybody recognizes, and Auburn also has two that everybody recognizes. The head-to-head was very close until recently. I think they may be up 5 or 6 now.
Yeah.
But if you think about it from a resource standpoint, it should be a mismatch. They're the state school. They don't Georgia Tech's their toughest competition in state. We are not the state school, and we happen to be second to the possibly best football program of all time. I think that we've held our own pretty well. It used to be a really good rivalry. My son currently, he's like watching this. He's like, man, he's like, what, he's upset as to how it's going with Auburn, and he's young. And I said, it's going to turn around at some point. I was like, when I was growing up in high school and stuff, we'd go on 3 or 4 win stretches against them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just how it typically happens. Now, Kirby's building a machine over there, so it's going to be tough. We got to get ourselves right here, but it'll bounce back. There'll be it'll be a good rivalry again, but that is not going to happen this weekend.
I mean, the way, especially, think back on what happened with Georgia versus Missouri and how Georgia almost lost that game. And they're going to come in with a extreme, we're going to beat Auburn. That's going to be their main goal. And that's Auburn. We're just kind of on the wrong side of it. Now, I will say this, and this kind of gets into talking about Georgia. Missouri figured out something on defensive line to attack Georgia. And Auburn's got to figure out really dissect what did Missouri do, because they were disrupting Georgia left and right. So if Auburn can figure out even a glimpse of that, I give us a lot better chance, because I think Georgia showed even more that they're not an invincible team at this point. I mean, for goodness sakes.
I don't think they're invincible. I think in Athens, and I mean, come on, we got gifted a game by Missouri and just lost to a team that threw for 85 yards. So that's the thing, that it's more about us. I think Georgia, I mean, if you want to be honest with it, Georgia beat Samford really well, but it was like 33-0. That's not what you would think Georgia would do. You think it'd be more.
Mm-hmm.
Kent State, they gave up 22. Missouri, they had to, they took control in the last 5 minutes. But I said this, I watched a few Georgia games. I said it about Alabama. They were relying a lot on one of their running backs. Georgia is very talented everywhere, but they are relying heavily on Brock Bowers, and that is how, and everything they do with him is working. If you find a way to slow that down, they are no longer invincible. And I think maybe Missouri, I didn't see that game, but maybe they figured out a way to slow. You can't stop that kid. He's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But if you can slow it down and not, like Kent State, I think the second play of the game, he went 75 yards on an end around. Like, you can't let that happen with him. Make them throw to their receivers, and they're all good. They're probably still going to beat you, but they're not invincible if you can do that.
Yeah. Well, even I was just looking at the stats for Georgia versus Missouri. Brock Bowers, he had a good game. He led the team in receiving, 66 yards, but he didn't have any touchdowns. He was, and one of those was a long 33-yard. So it kind of negates some of those probably smaller passes, shorter passes to him. So I think that's kind of how you do it. You stop the run. Georgia's going to be good. Kendall Milton is going to be one of their workhorses at running back. So you're going to have to figure out how to stop the run game and somehow stop Brock Bowers. He's a physical dude.
Yeah, if you keep Brock Bowers from scoring a touchdown, I think most teams. I just don't feel confident about Auburn at all. But I think a team that can put up points, if you can stop Brock Bowers from scoring, you have a shot, because everything goes through him on their offense. And Stetson Bennett, the thing about him is he's a smart guy. He's never going to win the arm talent test, but he's a smart guy and he's shifty. Like, he's hard to sack. He feels the rush.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to get lucky to sack him. I think their receivers are young. I don't think they have a go-to receiver yet. I think their run game's solid. It's okay. They were relying on Stetson Bennett in the first few weeks. I think their defense is potentially, you could expose them because they're young, super talented, probably all 5 stars, but young. I don't think Auburn's going to do this, but I think there are teams that can do it. Expose them a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I'd be happy exposing them a little bit if that helps a team later down the road figure something out, like kind of Missouri did. If that helps, Alabama and the SEC championship. And again, it sounds like I'm rooting against Georgia. I mean, I kind of am.
You are. If the Tennessee game is in Tennessee and it were right now, I'd probably pick Tennessee.
Yeah,
I've seen them both play. I don't know what that game is. I'd probably pick Tennessee right now. Things could change, obviously, but Yeah, I think that highly of Tennessee right now. They got to figure some things out defensively. But I know this isn't a Tennessee podcast. But just talking about Georgia and everything.
Yeah, definitely. Another kind of thing to just point out, and I was just thinking it was kind of interesting. So we just played LSU. They had a quarterback, Daniels. I know it was a different Daniels than JT Daniels, but Daniels has gone off to West Virginia. Stetson, obviously, doing his thing, and that's all honestly pretty impressive for a guy. But I want to see him actually do more than that. I don't know. Like maybe that's asking a little too much. But he seems to kind of just fit into that little mold, which maybe that's all Georgia needs them to do. Because at the end of the day, Georgia's defense is always going to be good, at least with Kirby Smart. So Auburn's got to find ways, especially in this game, to get creative. And we have to score in creative ways. We're not going to just run the ball up the gut. We're not going to just throw 5-yard pass, a 10-yard pass, and chip away at Georgia. That's not going to happen, and that's not even going to keep us in the game. So we got to figure out those creative ways that I thought, thinking back on the LSU game, we tried some extra stuff, some different plays to try to get guys open. And we're going to have to do that again and again and again against Georgia to get any kind of movement on offense. All right, Jared, let's talk about our players to watch. Let's talk first on offense. Who are you going to be watching for Auburn in this game against Georgia?
To me, it's pretty obvious. I think it's Robbie, because Robbie has at times looked a little you can tell he realizes it's a big moment, gets a little too amped, and that was in Jordan Hare. So he is now going in front of a crazy SEC crowd. Is he going to be able to keep his composure? I think because Georgia's defense, they lost like 15 players to the NFL on the defensive side, I think.
Yeah.
So, they're young, right? And Robbie showed that against LSU, if somebody doesn't know their assignment, keeps containment, he can create chunk plays in the passing game, keeping it. I think there's going to be some of those plays for us. I just don't know if we're going to be consistent enough. But I'll keep an eye on Robbie. How does he handle the easy thing?
Yeah.
Robbie, when he's rolling out and he's not thinking, his athleticism takes over. He's good. It's the thinking plays that we got to get him better at. If he can handle those and stay calm, we might surprise me with our offensive output a little bit.
Yeah. I think with Robbie, one of the things I want to watch this game for him is how he does the pretty much the zone read. I want to see him take the ball a couple times when it's obvious that he should take it. Because we even saw that last few games when he has had the opportunity and the opportunity, the hole's opened. He takes it. He goes for it. And if Robbie takes that a couple times, that sparks our offense. And not only that, but I think it's kind of like what we did with Bo over the last few years. If you get Bo's legs into the game, Bo Nix was a different quarterback. He felt the game. He could see the game a little better. And I think Robbie's kind of the same way, where you kind of get him moving around a little bit. Again, taps into that athleticism. He becomes a better quarterback overall. So he's got to do that.
What was a really good play design was Robbie was in shotgun and Tank was right beside him, and Robbie took the snap and actually pulled it up as though it was a pass.
Mm-hmm.
And then did a design draw play to Tank. It was a delayed play.
Yeah.
And I think it went for 5 to 7 yards. I thought that you don't see that a lot. I thought that was an interesting run play. I just thought about that. You were talking about the zone read, because it got me thinking too. Cam did it really well, and there's been other people that do too. That it's that ability to keep it in their chest for a little bit longer, to read it a little longer, but also not fumble it. And Robbie's right now really struggling with not fumbling that aspect. But if you could find a way to be so comfortable that you can hold it there longer, you really get a read of the defense on what you need to do. Yeah. As opposed to it just being I feel like his are predetermined right now.
Yeah, it's more or less. It kind of feels that way. Even I remembered watching a couple of times where I thought that would have been a fantastic, like they were biting on Tank, which obviously, I mean, like if I was a defender, I would have bitten on Tank doing anything. But you gotta, that's when Robbie needs to pull it and make them also respect him as a runner. So on offense, I'm going to be watching, and this is probably, I feel like this is how we're going to score. It's been the passing game. It's going to be tough, I feel like, to score against Georgia in the running game. I think it's got to be Coy Moore. With how well Robbie and Coy's kind of seem to have that connection, I think Coy's got to, him and Coy have to be on the same page this whole game. All right, let's move on to defense. Jared, who are you going to be watching on defense for Auburn?
On defense, it's going to be those linebackers. I keep saying it every week. I think they're the only missing piece to us being really stout on defense. That is now hinging on the fact that, Burks can fill that Ekuliota gap. So maybe I should say Marquise Burks, but or is it Braggs? Is it Braggs?
I think it's Braggs, yeah.
Sorry, Braggs. But I think the linebackers. I think if the linebackers can stop the up the middle 5 to 7 yard rushes that are happening way too often.
Yeah.
Force the offense to be a little more, do a little more, schematically, and have to think a little more than just running up the gut. I think we could be the defense we all thought we were going to be, and we're close. I mean, we've only given up 14 points the past 2 games, but each game gave up 14. We're really close. I think they're the missing piece, and I don't know if you give the guy from, we had that Asante that transferred from North Carolina.
Yeah.
I don't know if you give him a shot. I mean, we got a 4-star linebacker from, was it Mobile, who is on the team. I know he's a freshman. Owen played as a freshman. Maybe you give some guy. I'm all for at this point just giving guys a chance. And we did miss Cam Riley. I think Cam Riley actually got hurt in the Missouri game, so he didn't play at all at LSU.
Yeah, he was a big missing piece. Like, I think we were kind of, especially his first game. I think it was the very first game. He was just went off and had many tackles. He was everywhere, and you're like, where did this guy come from?
He did.
And then it kind of slowed down, and we didn't see him. So we'll see if he ends up coming back. I hope he does, because he can make an impact.
I feel like that's just the missing piece. So if we get that linebacker core figured out, and they're going to be big in the Cam with his size will help, because he might get deflate pass. They're going to be throwing to Brock, and they got another tight end, number 0, who is just a monster. I mean, he's bigger than Brock Bowers. He's just not. I don't think he's able to do as much, so he doesn't get as much attention. But they got some big tight ends, so we need our linebackers to be ready to play. Yeah,
absolutely. Play big and play physical. And I'll give them this. I feel like our defensive backs have become more physical. I feel like we the first few games, maybe the first 3 games, we were kind of sitting back, being a little passive, letting the other team dictate. And I think we've changed the mentality and said we're going to be aggressive, and we're going to make you fit it in those tight windows. And so far, I feel like the secondary has done that. And that makes it really hard. It was obvious against LSU with their super low percentage of 38% that game. That's hard. That makes it so much harder on the quarterback and the wide receivers. My player to watch on defense is going to be Derek Hall. And just for the sole reason of Ekuliota being out, I think there's going to be a lot more attention put on Derek Hall. Seeing what he does, I have a feeling they're probably still going to do a lot of making sure he doesn't get to the quarterback. But there will be times where I feel like Derek Hall will still do his thing. I mean, he did it against LSU, and he'll do it again. So that's where I think if we get a little bit of that extra pressure, and Missouri was able to do it on LSU, or Missouri was able to do it on Georgia. Sorry. So I think that all kind of comes back to that front 7, and I'm specifically thinking about Derek Hall. Special teams, who are you going to be watching for this game?
It's got to be what we do at kicker. If we keep Carlson in there, can he produce? And seeing if we go with is it McPherson or McPherson?
Yep. McPherson. I don't.
Yeah. See if we do we do on a longer kick, especially if it's needed, or we get. I think the longer aspect is not even I don't even think that's even on Anders. I think he just at this point just doesn't have. He's recovering from a torn ACL.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think
It's a serious injury.
Yeah, I mean, I think the long kicking aspect is not even his fault, right? I think that if it's 55 or more, maybe even 45 or more, you just shouldn't even expect him at this stage to make that. But if it's in from that, if you're starting him, he needs to be able to make those. So let's see what happens with that.
Yeah, I think Anders. I mean, we talked about it, and I hope Anders can figure it out. I mean, I've heard of sports psychologists that have really helped players in all different sports. I wonder if that's what he needs, or if it is truly. I hope it's not. It doesn't seem like it's a physical thing because he's still doing the great kickoffs. He's making all the PATs. I wonder if it is a mental thing with him. And if he can figure that piece out, I mean, leave him in. But if we have a struggle again, if we're at the 35-yard line and we need to kick a long field goal, I don't think we have the faith in him to do it. And sometimes you do need to do that, especially in these closer games.
You're too young to remember this, but John Smoltz struggled early in his career. And
I watched some John Smoltz. Maybe not his super early career.
This was kind of early on, and he struggled. And his sports psychologist would sit behind home plate in a red shirt, and it would actually help him focus.
Huh.
I think whenever he would lose focus, he would seek out his sports psychologist, and it was easy to find him. He had a bright red shirt on.
Huh. That's kind of interesting.
Regain focus. So.
I mean, I think there's something to be said for that because I've heard different sports have their different mentalities, especially golf is such a very mental game. You have to be locked in for the full 4 hours. Guess what? Very similar to football. You got to be locked in, and if you allow yourself to doubt your ability, that's when bad stuff starts happening.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a kicker for a college football team, you're good enough physically.
Yeah.
If you're making or missing, it's mental.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, if it's 55 yards or more, maybe a little physical, but anything 40 closer that's missed is. I mean, the Missouri kicker missed a 25-yard field goal. That is not physical.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
Yeah, it's all mental. So yeah, it's a tough. They joke about being a kicker is not a tough job. It's a tough job. The game could come down to you. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. I mean, as much as and again, that's why, especially in college, I feel like you see a little bit more of a leaning on, hey, we're going to go for it on fourth down versus go to a kicker. And I think Auburn has been very blessed with having fantastic kickers previous and even Anders before he got injured. I mean, if you put him out there for a 45-yard, I was like, it's mostly going in. I mean, that's the kind of confidence we had in kickers. And I think we just need to get back to that. And if we can't, then let's try the next guy. For special teams, I'm going to be watching Keandre Scott. And just simply, I think I've seen now 2 fumbles that he's had on punt returns. And we got to stop that. We really do. That's going to be something that really bites us in the butt. I mean, it almost did against LSU. Well, I guess it did ultimately, but it could have been even worse. So we got to stop that. I feel like Keandre Scott takes some risks and maybe reel that in just a little bit, so that he can just cleanly field the ball. And if there's a running route, go for it. All right, Jared, let's get into our score predictions for this game. Right now, Auburn is only predicted to win this game in Athens. It's a 2:30 game, 6.1% according to ESPN stats. So I feel like as Auburn fans, we almost need to come into this mindset of, yeah, it's probably not going to happen, but let's cause a little chaos. That's all I would hope for.
I'm feeling the Jim Carrey on Dumb and Dumber right now. So you're saying there's a chance?
There is a slight chance. That's right.
There's a 6% chance. I'm surprised it's that high.
Me too. So anyway, let's talk about our score predictions here. Preseason, I predicted Georgia would win by 10. You said very similar thing, 31-21, 10-point victory for Georgia. I feel like now that we're into the season 5 games, I'm going to change mine. Jared, what are you kind of feeling for this right now?
I'm predicting us to win, AJ.
Whoa!
I've been building up the negative. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I have no clue. I'm going to go 35-10. I mean, I feel like they probably could put more on us. I just feel like it's going to be one of those, like, there's no way Auburn comes back. We're just going to run the ball, run the clock down, and get out of here. So I'm 35-10.
Yeah. I mean, and I was looking at the line is 29.5 points right now. So, honestly, that seems about right in my mind. I mean, if you even look back, so I was looking back at recent games against Georgia. We've lost by 20, 34 points last season. That was in Auburn, or 24 points. Sorry, it's kind of in that Georgia has our number at this point. And maybe Kirby Smart is he's figured out what Auburn's going to do on offense and figures out how to counter that. I think for my score prediction, I'm going to be probably about the same. I mean, I think we're probably going to lose by like 24 to 28 points. If we get a couple of touchdowns, I'm going to count it as, it's definitely not a moral victory, but I think it's the little successes that we can kind of build on. I do not see a way out of this one. So
no, I don't either. Haven't felt that way in a long time, AJ. Where
Yeah.
I was like, there's zero hope. Like sometimes I'll even get myself psyched up. Oh, it's a big rivalry game. You never know what's going to happen. Yeah, I know what's going to happen in this game.
Well, and you're also factoring in Georgia in their close games, or close game against Missouri. You're like, they're going to be at home. They're not going to allow that. There's not even a chance. So
it's not going to be good.
All right, so let's talk about an Auburn fan perspective of the SEC. It's one of our favorite segments of this podcast. Mississippi State, of all teams, beat Texas A&M. So look how far Texas A&M has fallen. I mean, it wasn't even a close win. It was 42-24. That's pretty crazy to me. I mean, I had predicted preseason that Texas A&M is going to kind of fall back down to like that 7-5 team. They're well on their way right now. They're 3-2.
When I think about Auburn, I'm like, at least we're not A&M, and here's what I mean by that. A&M is so pot committed on Jimbo. I mean they just print money over there, so maybe they're not. but it's like, at least with us, okay, everybody's on the same page. Most likely it's not with Harsin, and we're gonna move quickly. Like, how long do they let this Jimbo experiment drag out? I mean, the guy's recruiting like crazy, and he's still losing to App State.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I saw that. Like, I've always thought this about Jimbo. He did have that great year with Jameis Winston. But, I mean, what really was telling to me is how bad Florida State's been since he left. I mean, he left that team. I mean, it was in shambles.
Yeah.
That was pretty telling to me as far as like what he was building when he was having to build it. So I don't know. They got a lot of talent there, but they're gonna. Yeah, I mean, I thought 8-4. They're gonna lose more than that. They've already lost 2. Like at this point in our current form, I would pick us to beat A&M at home.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about that one. Honestly,
as crazy as that sounds, that's what I would pick us to beat them at home right now. We got them at home now. Things could change, but yeah, it's they're not a good football team.
Yeah, and again, like, they squander so much talent. It's just truly amazing. Like, somebody like Mike Leach, of all people, like, he's a pretty good coach, obviously, but like, he outcoached Jimbo Fisher. Like, in what world do we live in that Jimbo Fisher just got outcoached by somebody who loves Pirates and literally after the game talked about wedding advice to a commentator or reporter? You're like
I love Mike.
Like, what is going on? In what world are we living in? Oh, sorry. Love it. We had a couple other smaller games. South Carolina won, Florida won. Alabama versus Arkansas. Alabama won this game against Arkansas. I think Arkansas is coming back down to earth a little bit. They're now 3-2. But they're still a very capable team. I'm still very scared to face them later this year. But one of the other big storylines is Bryce Young came out with it looked like a shoulder issue, and I don't think he ended up coming back after that. So I'll be kind of interested to see how severe that is. I mean, Auburn, we know this with having TJ, and even Robbie last game getting a little scared with his shoulder. Shoulders are necessary for any of the players. So they've kind of got Bryce Young at least on a day-to-day watch. So we'll see how long he's not able to play. This is something crazy. I saw this stat about this game. Saban has never lost to Arkansas in his 16 years at Alabama. We thought Gus had Arkansas's name, but Saban, Arkansas had some pretty decent teams over the years. Saban hasn't lost to them, so that's pretty darn impressive. That's
crazy.
All right. I think the only other one, and we've kind of mentioned this, Georgia almost losing to Missouri. Now Bama takes over the number 1 spot in the AP poll. Not that it really matters, because AP poll doesn't really matter until the college football playoffs committee comes out with their official rankings. But that is kind of interesting to me that, even though Georgia won, it wasn't as convincing. Alabama, on the other hand, had a very convincing win over Arkansas in Fayetteville. So, you're kind of seeing that, there's a lot of swings that happen, in how much up and down you kind of go in the rankings. I'll also say this, and I thought this was kind of cool. I saw a highlight for this as kind of an honorary mention. There was an FSU player, a wide receiver that looked like he got brought down. He literally rolled over the defender, kind of Michael Dyer style, that we saw back in 2010. And just kept going. And, Michael Dyer got caught, but this FSU wide receiver just kept going. So that was kind of cool to see. Even one of the commentators was like, I don't think I've ever seen this in my life. And I was like, well, I guess you didn't watch the 2010 national championship game.
These commentators are getting younger and younger. Maybe they weren't born then. I don't know.
It's possible.
We got a 12-year-old commentator. It always irked me. I didn't see that play, but it would always irk me when Les Miles would get all that credit for that fake field goal they did, where the guy flicked it behind his head.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh, that's Les Miles. I'm like, Tommy Tuberville did that like 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Before that play. Tommy didn't get his due on. They're like, I've never seen this before. I'm like, well, I have.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's and Tommy wasn't even, well, he was known as the riverboat gambler, but I felt like when he got to Auburn, he became kind of conservative because his defenses were so good.
Yeah.
But,
he still had his occasional, we're going to pull an onside kick, or we're going to do this crazy trick play. But he definitely toned it down a little bit. Speaking of Tommy Tuberville, I forgot to mention this. I went by, they were doing the Auburn Sports Network broadcast. They had their stage right by the stadium, and my wife and I were walking past. And we're like, that's Tommy Tuberville. Like he's on the Sports Network right now, and he had some very insightful stuff, because he was asked about what is it like, especially at a big SEC school, and being the head coach. And he kept saying things that Jared, you and I have heard before. You got to be the CEO, but he kind of put it in a little bit different perspective. He said, you have to be very, because money goes through, it's not through other sports. There is money that goes through it, but they're not as profitable as football. And so there's a lot riding on you, a lot of pressure. And so that's what he was kind of getting at. And I think you're starting to see that with Harsin. And it was funny. He said something, and he actually got some boos from the crowd. He mentioned, he was like, oh, I saw, Saban got a raise. And Tuberville was like, whatever he got, it wasn't enough. He needed to get paid more because he brings in so much money to that university. I was like, you're probably right, but I hate you for saying that.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Like, you can't pay Saban enough. But, yeah, I agree. We don't want to be hearing that, right?
Yeah, no, you don't. And he was saying that right outside Jordan Hare with Auburn fans listening. So I was like, I don't know how to feel about that. I get what he's saying, but yeah. Anyway. All right, Jared, how can the people stay in touch with you?
You can find me on Facebook under my name, Jared Davis.
and you can find me on Twitter at AJY_. It's always great to be an Auburn Tiger, and War Eagle.
War Eagle.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.